Whether you're a seasoned vet of the payments industry or a brand new rookie who just heard the term dual pricing for the first time, you're in the right place. This is the only podcast that shares the strategies and stories behind selling merchant services, all from the perspective of those on the front lines. Welcome to AgentFirst. Hey everybody, it's John. We'll get to the episode here in just a second, but I wanted to take just a moment to give you some context. You see, this is our first ever interview episode, and we're really excited to have Ira Cornelius, who's the founder at Membership Merchant. The problem is that Justin and I have known Ira for years, and so we kind of blaze through the introduction and right into talking to him. So I just wanted to give you the context. We're talking to Ira. We've known him for a long time. I think you're going to love this episode. Let's get to it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the latest episode of Agent First. There are a few different things about this episode. If you're listening to us, and I assume that's how most of you consume the podcast, you'll hear a third voice here in a minute, because this is our first episode with somebody that we are interviewing.
Super pumped.
Very excited to be here, boys.
I'm John. He's Justin. Not the voice you just heard. I'll introduce in a second, though. Also, you may not know, but we put videos out of these podcasts, and so this is the first time that I'm not the best looking person on the video. That's not true. But if you haven't consumed it on video, this would be a great time to start that, because Ira's a good looking guy. And I realized I just said his name. And then the other big thing is this is the first time we're recording that the podcast actually has a name.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think if you listen to our first 3 episodes, we kept referencing the yet-to-be-named podcast, but it's official. It's Agent First, and that's what we're out in the world. So I'm super excited, and I'm going to let him talk about himself, but we've got Ira Cornelius. Ira and I have known each other for 9-10 years, somewhere in that. I think Justin's known him a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I know Justin has some stories he'll share, but
plenty.
we'll let Ira share his versions first before Justin corrects him. And really, this was just an opportunity to get to, I know we talk about agents all the time, but what better way than to talk to an agent who's actively selling right now?
Right.
And so, Ira, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, excited to have you.
Me?
You're in us now.
Told
That's
you
okay.
the nerves, the nerves.
So why don't we, probably the best way is just maybe your introduction into sales first, although I think payments was pretty close to your first sales gig. But maybe talk about how did you first get into sales, and how did you find payments, and kind of tell us your origin story.
Yeah, so it all started back at Metro Center Mall, and if you're an Arizona native, you know what mall that is. That is no longer, unfortunately, rest in peace.
Yeah.
I was slanging shoes at Journey Shoe Store, actually. So that kind of got me into like understanding like what sales was, and like talking to people and things like that. Quickly realized that it was a terrible job, and I was too young. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I left, and I started working at the bank for a little while, which kind of introduced me into like the finance world, I guess you could say. Worked there for a little while, started as a teller, personal banker, and then went into business banking. And that's what opened me up to merchant services and like the payroll side of things. That was really like the customer service side, right? Like kind of dealing. I feel so like going back.
You're good.
It's a little. The people listening don't know that you're sitting between the two of us. So, yeah.
But so that's what got me essentially interested in this industry. But that was also a sales job back in the day. So before people. Like now in banking, there's no really sales into it, but banking used to be somewhat of a sales job back in the day before the banks got busted.
So here's what
I don't know why.
I'm going to stop you because I'm going to let Justin take over then a little bit. So you started selling shoes, which is where a lot of us start when it comes to sales. And I've worked in banking too, so I kind of know what you're talking about. Justin, tell me maybe when did Ira first kind of, because you hired Ira at Heartland,
right, exactly.
So that's part of the backstory here.
Oh,
that
I love
know we'll get to.
And I love this story. I love this story. It's one of my favorites, and I tell this story all the time. I mean, we always Ira and I joke around this. We have to find Willie Collins someday. So Willie Collins, William Collins, if he's out there, thanks Willie. Was at the time, I was a division manager, growing a team in Arizona. Willie was a recruiter, working for Heartland, was kind of assigned to my, territory to help me. He was struggling. I was very particular about the people I would interview. Willie calls me up and says, hey, I got this guy, Ira. I think you're going to love him. And I'm like, all right, cool. What's his background? Oh, he's a banker. And I'm like, oh, dude, no, they never work out. No. He's like, Justin, you just got to. And I said, okay, because you're struggling, man, I'll give this guy a chance. Talked with Ira, felt the energy and the passion and the eagerness of like, okay, this kid's different. And then we went and had breakfast at Snooze on a Saturday morning.
Yep.
I can tell you exactly where we sat and everything because it was so impactful because it felt different. I could see that, he had what it took he had that passion, that eagerness, the coachability that like, okay, he can do it. And that's, 9-10 years ago now. And lots of stories between then and now, but immense success. One of the most successful guys in the industry I know that has just done it from step one.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with how you
remember? Yeah,
it?
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is that after I left the bank, I remember I was super scared because at Heartland back in the day you had to have 20 appointments, which I found out before you actually got hired there. And when I talked to Justin originally, it had been 10 appointments, right. But I was standing outside of Macy's at Metro Center Mall actually, and I remember when you called me and you were like, yeah, I just want to make sure that you can really do this. And, instead of doing 10 appointments, I think you should really do, 20, just to make sure that you're hitting the ground running. Right. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know anybody. I've never been in outside sales before. And I took the leap, man. I was just so miserable at the bank. I didn't know that was just not for me. It wasn't my future there. But I made it happen. I kind of dove into my network and made it happen and got the 20 appointments. I think 18 of them are bullshit. And 2 of them we might have closed, maybe, But yeah, it all just kind of spiraled, out of control from there.
I love that. One thing I'd love to unpack a little bit is many times we are looking for attributes in successful salespeople that are like, okay, they have this background, right? And everybody has their different things. And I tend to believe that a lot of times people that were competitive athletes many times end up being very successful in sales. You've got a background in that. I'd love to hear from you, talk about what that background was.
Yeah.
And then how you think maybe that helped you in this arena.
Yeah, so growing up, I played some traditional sports like hockey and baseball and basketball. I'm 5'9", so basketball didn't work out for me. But I moved into motocross and wakeboarding, competitive wakeboarding. And the wakeboarding side of things really, I think, converted over into sales pretty easily for me because it was a matter of just going out and consistently doing the same thing over and over and over again so that when competition time came around, you were able to land your tricks, without any effort whatsoever. Right. It was almost just like on autopilot. And I kind of ingrained that into just my brain at a young age. And I realized that as I moved over into sales, it was pretty much the same exact thing, right? To where you've got to go out, you've got to, get clients, obviously, number one. Without clients, you don't have anything. But it's the process of getting the clients, right? So going out, pulling on doors, trying to figure out how to entice somebody to meet with you. And then once you, figure out what works, then you just do that same thing over and over and over and over again in the midst of all the failure that you've already came across, right? And that was really good because I was always striving to be the best wakeboarder out there in every single class that I moved up in. At the end of the year I was always getting first place and everything, so I was used to that, right? So that also transitioned over to where I was like, listen, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability and be the number one sales guy at every place that I go, because I just didn't want to do it mediocre. So yeah, it was just learning the process, which sucked. If you've been in this industry, you know that trying to cold call for merchant services is not easy whatsoever. But that's the school of hard knocks, right? That's what teaches you how to actually do this job the right way, and then eventually scale it into an actual business later on.
And just like any competitive sports or wakeboarding or anything, only a small percentage of people really master the craft and become super successful at it.
Yeah.
And I'll also say, for anybody out there wondering, you have that friend or that buddy or the cousin who's I used to be a really good golfer. I used to be professional
glory
at this.
days.
The glory. I used to think that of like Ira, and then I went out on the lake with him, and like, yeah, it's legit. Dude's doing like flips in the air and
still doing
stuff.
it, baby.
I mean, it's impressive. It's impressive.
And wakeboarding is such and people are more familiar with it now, but back then it was such a small sport. You know, like nobody really knew it. It was like wakeboarding, what's that? Like snowboard, what is that? You know, like skiing, which was cool. But that's why I just took that one thing that, you know, if you don't know about it, it's a really difficult sport. It's very physically demanding, you know? So like you're hitting, you know, when you're out trying tricks and stuff like that, kind of like snowboarding, you're failing over and over and over again, and you're falling all the time, and you're beating down your body. But it's something that, you know, if you continue to do over time and you keep doing it, you're going to get good at it, right? And then just stay the course, keep doing it, you know? Yeah. I don't want to be the used to guy, you know? Yeah.
You're getting old now, man.
I know,
You're in your 30s.
I know.
You're super old.
I got a receding hairline, you know?
That's hurtful.
So you start at Heartland, and obviously we could tell the story going forward of Heartland, which then transitioned into Beyond, which then transitioned into you starting your own thing, and I think sometimes people just see you now, and they don't understand all the hard yards that went into that. And so it's not this, hey, I started here and it's this nice linear straight line to success. There's a lot of major pitfalls in there that I know you went through. And so, like, what's the biggest one that you had to overcome, biggest either moment or attribute or whatever it is for you that just say, I've got one I know about you, but I'd love to hear you.
Yeah. So in the beginning at Heartland, I decided to go, I think it was my 3rd month into it, and I went to Whistler, Canada with a buddy of mine to go downhill mountain biking, which is also an extremely dangerous, like, just don't do it kind of sport, you know? And I, with my motocross background, just started downhill mountain biking, and we were into the 2nd day there. First day, we were hitting all the black, you know, lines. So if you're familiar with skiing and stuff, like all the black diamond stuff was like the hardest lines. But the next day, I had hit a jump that flew me over the handlebars, and I ended up breaking my femur in Canada. And my buddy kept riding down the mountain, so I didn't see him.
The big bone.
The big bone. So this bad boy right here.
Yeah, the big bone.
And that was my 3rd month in sales, you know, and I was freaking out. Like instantly right after I broke my femur, I was thinking about like, if you're at Heartland, my FDAs and my sales and how I was going to close all this stuff, because I had just quit a job that had a salary and went to a 100% commission sales job. But yeah, I was in the hospital, and I remember before I called my wife, which you were my DM at the time, I called Justin, and I was like, Justin, like, dude, I just broke my leg. I think I'm going to be all right. I don't know. It's my first bone I ever broke, but I don't know how I'm going to run my FTAs, man. Like,
I don't know how I'm going to make my quota
I don't know how I'm going to make my quota this month, you know? And he's like, you all right, dude? Like, why are you calling me? Don't worry about that stuff. Like, call your wife. But that was a huge hurdle, because I was there for 7 days, and I came back, and, you know, I basically was bedridden because I had, you know, a rod and pin put in my femur and stuff like that. But I think like 3 weeks after it, before I was even supposed to start driving, I was out like driving around, getting out of my car with crutches and crutching into businesses.
Sympathy
sales, which actually ended up being some of my best months ever. So if you're ever trying to like pull a trick on people, you know, it's like get out some crutches. But that was a major hurdle that I had to overcome. But there were so many other ones. Like, I mean, the hardest part is just overcoming business owners every single day, you know, in this industry where it's just highly solicited, and you're walking into a place that might have already had 3-4 phone calls throughout the day of merchant guys trying to save them money or tell them that their PCI compliance is out of order or whatever, you know, like it's trying to figure out how to get past that major barrier. And that for like 5-6 years of this, where I'm at now, like 5-6 years of that was just the toughest part ever, right? The femur was pretty difficult, but it also ended up kind of working out for me. So
Was there a moment that, and I know, and I think everybody's story is that, right? And obviously you had Justin, which maybe made some of those days a little bit easier than other people's. Was there a deal or a day where everything just worked, and you had the first glimpse of like, oh wait, I could maybe do this for a while and actually be successful at it?
Yeah, I think it was. Literally right before I went to Canada, I had actually thought about leaving Heartland, and I went and sat with my father-in-law at a Starbucks and kind of mapped it all out because I was so stressed out, the first few months because I wasn't really getting as many sales as I wanted to get. I wasn't really having the success that I thought I was going to have right off the bat. And I was stressed out. And I was like, Wells Fargo had come back to me. That's the bank that I used to work for. And they were trying to offer me a job for like $100,000 a year salary. And they were dangling it in front of me. And I went and talked to my father-in-law about it. And, I just put both things on the table about, with Heartland and this industry, like going this route, this is what this can potentially provide like later on in life, right? Like as you build this thing, I see the future benefit in it. But right now, my bills aren't really getting paid, and my wife isn't really bringing in that much working at another bank. So like we're kind of stressing out on it. And Wells Fargo's over here offering me 6 figures. And at the time, I was like, dang, that's a lot of money. So I just told the pros and cons, and luckily he kind of pushed me back towards that. And after that moment, everything kind of started clicking to me, like how this process works and how I can like really make this thing work. And it was really after that moment that it started to, because after like my 4th or 5th month, I started seeing some pretty good success, was throwing up some good margins, starting to get some pretty big clients. And that was really the aha moment for me there, is because I started to figure it out and focus on what the future would be and just go through the grind. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I know, obviously, Justin, you met Ira before I did. My first introduction to you, I think, was someone telling me about this bundle of energy that we had hired in Arizona, right? And starting to see your name on things, and obviously, I was involved in the Diamond program and some of those. But I remember fairly early on you kind of finding a niche in your background, right, in motocross, and you kind of became the motocross guy, the adventure sports guy, and everything. Was that something you saw early on, or was that kind of as you needed to start finding businesses, you just kind of fell back on what you knew from growing up?
In the beginning, it was like any kind of business I could try to get my hands on, but then at that like 4-5 month mark when I was into it, I started realizing like this business is about having some sort of commonality and relationship with the business owner. So I was like, what am I into? Oh, I'm into this and I'm into that. And there's businesses that are evolved around that, are built around that. So that's where I really started kind of moving into that industry. At Heartland, it wasn't so much a beyond, it was more, that's where I really discovered like, oh, I can be the guy in this industry, and started going after some of the big dog companies there. And then, that kind of turned into, all the other businesses that were also tied to that, right? Sure. But that was definitely one of my like big moments that started separating me, I feel like, from the pack, is just finding a commonality with a specific industry and then realizing how big that industry is, and there's nobody doing this essentially in that industry. That was a big help with getting me started on that.
And I think there's a lot of value in talking about that, diving that a little deeper, is for everybody out there listening. And that's really what this AgentFirst podcast is about, is like providing cool stories like this for some dude sitting in his car in Alabama somewhere who's thinking about quitting the industry, but hearing somebody who's been through this is like, what are you into? Go just hang out with people that are in the same thing and try to find business that way. There's a lot of value in that, whatever it is you're into. And you found a lot of success in that. And that in other ways, but I think when you're down to maybe like, gosh, I'm not sure what I should do next, going back to those basics, because you can just sit there and, I know nothing about motorcycles and side-by-sides, all that stuff, but you can talk all day long about that. And even if you don't get a sale, man, I had a fun day just hanging out with dudes that are doing the same thing as me, right?
Yeah, so if you're thinking about, if you're struggling in this industry trying to figure out a way to like get clients, it's 100% all about relationships, right? And if you're trying to build a relationship with somebody that's completely opposite of you to try to meet with them and sell them on merchant services, it's probably not going to happen,
right.
And it's a waste of time is what it is. So like, instead of wasting your time, you really got to like reflect on yourself and figure out, what am I into? And then are there businesses that are also, built around that? And if you can figure out how to go into those places at the right time and start talking to these people and connect with them and build a relationship on commonalities, then you're going to have a lot easier chance at like meeting with them, because it's just a human interaction, You'll have a lot better chance meeting with them and then, getting a sale and nurturing the relationship going forward.
That's why I sold so many bacon places, like bacon king places when I was selling.
So what you know, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So one of the things that I think people struggle with, and I know you did in the beginning and have adapted over time on this, is how formal of a business relationship this needs to be. I think people come into this thinking sometimes I need to put on my suit, or I need to, be dressed up. I need to like have this formal relationship with my customers. And I know in the beginning you struggle with that because that's not you. You're a relationship guy. We're gonna be friends together. Over time, I've seen that really evolve with you to where the other day I heard you talking with a customer like I thought it was your cousin, and you were like, yeah. My customers would tell them what's up, and so talk about that from your perspective. Like, I mean, does it need to be professional, or do you find one is more effective than the other?
I think it all depends on how you're running your business, right? So like if you're running your business and you want to dress up on a suit every single day, or you want to wear, like the standard salesman outfit, which is like a polo and tight pants and, your brown shoes and brown belt and all that, which I still do that every once in a while, some khakis, yeah. Then that's fine if you want to do that and walk into a place with a pad folio, and hand out a pamphlet, But it's not going to work that well in today's market. It hasn't. And I quickly realized, because I went from that whole banking, wearing a suit thing to, maybe I should do that here too, so people like respect me. I'm a young guy in the industry. Like, right. I need to like look the part. That did everything but it did the opposite. Like all it did was just make people not want to talk to me, But yeah, over time I just realized that like, stop trying to be somebody that you're not in this industry, and treat the relationships with these business owners the same way you would treat it with your friends. Because once these people see that side of you, they see that you're a real person, they see that you have a family, they see that you have a heart, they see that you have a regular personality, you wear regular clothes and stuff, which is a hard time for most people to see that when you're a salesman,
Right.
Then they start respecting you, and they start treating you like you just met him at the bar, or you met him at a sporting event or a family function, and you're a friend of a friend or something like that. And that starts building the relationship right off the bat, to where they now trust you. They trust you now. They trust you with handling their merchant account, and they're not gonna leave you because they like you. You know. Yeah. So over time, like the way that I'm dressed now, this is how I go to most of my meetings, unless it's like a referral from a CPA or something like that, and you have to it's a real big business, and you got to be professional because you're sitting in a boardroom. I don't like those, but they do happen every once in a while. But most of them are just like this. You talk to them like your friends, because my clients are my friends now. They all are friends with me on Facebook. They follow me on Instagram. They see what I post. I hold nothing back, and they like that. People like that stuff.
Yeah, I remember the conversation I heard you having, and I'll soften it up because there was a lot.
Please, because I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
He was like, "Are you gonna stop being a pansy and switch to dual pricing or what?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a customer he's talking to." Because the first half of it, there was a lot of other things discussed. There was like, well, I thought he was talking to a buddy, and then I was like, and then the guy by the end of the conversation says, "Yeah, okay," and he's like, "I'll send you the paper." We'll
Shout out Damien at Zona Liquidators.
There you go, bro. That was it. That was awesome. I was laughing my butt off at that. Yeah.